So the first presentation looked at the Belong To report and their findings in the secondary school context in relation to the experience of LGBTI plus students. Now we're looking at some statistics available at third level, which hopefully add to the argument for queering the curriculum. So the report I'm looking at in this presentation is called Understanding the Lived Experiences of Gender Minority Students in Irish Third Level Education, and it is a national survey of transgender, non-binary and gender non-conforming students, and it was conducted by Trinity College Dublin in conjunction with the RCSI and sponsored by TENI and the National LGBT Federation of Ireland, and it was a report that came out in autumn 2019. And there were 123 respondents who consisted of full-time and recent graduates and postgraduates. And as I say, the respondents came from the transgender, non-binary or gender non-conforming student group. And this report was written by Dr. Chris Chevalier, Dr. Susan Murphy and Dr. Conor Buggy. The survey asked that the respondents be transgender, non-binary or gender non-conforming, and the term gender non-conforming was included to invite and allow people with gender variant identities outside of trans or non-binary to take part and self-identify. The respondents were also given the opportunity to select one or multiple gender identities from an established list. But they could also use an other fill-in box to self-identify. Intersex was listed, but the team is cognizant that an intersex person might have a different gender identity, and the team is also aware that not all gender non-conforming and non-binary people identify as transgender, and that some transgender people also identify as non-binary. But by allowing respondents to self-identify and select multiple options, the team aimed to allow respondents full expression and allow multifaceted identities to be voiced. The report also used the pronouns they, their, them, singular, and plural gender neutral pronouns when referring to respondents, and that was done to ensure anonymity and is not necessarily a reflection of the respondent's gender. Here you can see an extract from the report, figure 3.4, and the variety of genders that were reported from 121 of the respondents. Going from non-binary, male, in brackets there AFAB stands for a female at birth. We see transmasculine, female, genderqueer, all the way down to neutral and intersex. So the report analysed the findings under a number of headings, including mental health and chronic illness. And the rates of mental and chronic illness were considerably higher among the respondents than when you compare them with the general population. For example, 9% and 7% of full-time undergrads and postgrads reporting mental health problems respectively. And in conjunction with this data, 78% of the respondents reported mental health or medical issues as having a negative impact on their academic performance. And 48% of them cited limited access to medical and transition services, and also having a detrimental effect on them. Throughout the report, there were quotations from some of the respondents, which are particularly poignant. And if we look at this one here, the student says, "At times I feel powerful, proud, and strive to continue to just be myself without minding what society thinks. And other times I feel like an alien. I don't fit in anywhere. I don't look like everyone else. I feel like a laughingstock and a freak show where people stare and point at me just because I don't look like everyone else." And then we see the intersectionality. It doesn't help that they're Asian. They don't look like a typical Asian. But overall, I think that if the people in the society became more open-minded and learn about gender issues, I would maybe feel more comfortable to just be myself. Isn't it a wonderful thing to be able to bring your whole self to work or school? In this question, the students were asked, have you experienced verbal or sexual harassment related to your gender identity or expression? And what form did this take if that happened? And you can see 50% of the respondents experiencing inappropriate questions about their body and their sexuality. 39% experiencing insults or jokes. Happily, 26% not experiencing any form of verbal or sexual harassment. But you go deeper into the graph and you see items like sexually inappropriate remarks or catcalling, unwelcome sexual advances or discussions, threats, intimidating behaviour, and so on. And when they were asked who did they experience the harassment from, the respondents, 45% of them said they experienced it from fellow students, 17% someone outside the campus community, 8% reported experiencing harassment from teaching staff. I'm surprised to see that 4% experienced harassment from support services. And then we can see non-academic staff and club and coach members on the list as well. And when we look at where harassment was experienced by the respondents, we see it's in a number of locations on campus and also in the online environment. And it's sad to see that 24% of the respondents reported that they experienced harassment in the classroom. And it's a pity that we don't know more about the situation around this, and if it could be ascertained if the lecturer or teaching staff could have helped to reduce or eliminate this. But look at the other areas on campus. So the common areas, the library, the grounds, the bathrooms, sports areas, changing areas, the office, the student housing, the entrance to the campus, and societies, and the canteen area or cafeteria. So I was thinking that as you were reading this, that maybe some ideas would pop into your head about assignments that you could give students in the area of, we say, social justice or statistical analysis in relation to gender and so on. And an idea that came into my head was asking your students to use the report findings and statistics to produce a heat map of the locations where harassment was experienced, as if it was applied to their own campus, and maybe to bring about some discussion in relation to this. Another heading in the report was the experience of violence on campus, and 93% of students have no experience of this, thankfully. But again, when you look at the rest of the figures, it's one too many. Sexual violence or assault reported by 3.4% of our respondents. 2.56% prefer not to say. 1.71% experienced physical violence, and 0.85% added this themselves, that there was obsession over their sex and genitals. So this was an add-on in a comments box. So the report also had survey questions in relation to the campus atmosphere. And you can see here the responses to a number of questions, question 12 to 25. And the mean response is based on a 7-point Likert scale, with 7 meaning strongly agree and 1 meaning strongly disagree. And the responses indicate largely neutral to slightly positive experiences in terms of acceptance, safety and respect. and responses were closer to 4 regarding medical and mental health services, as well as wider acceptance of respondent gender representation. And they generally suggest a wide array of experiences rather than homogenous ones, like a majority of the respondents selecting the same Likert response. The strongest responses were regarding bathrooms and changing areas. So if you look at question 24, I prefer gender neutral facilities to gender segregated ones. We see a 6, which is approaching the strongly agree. Respondents, let me see what else are they saying. There was also discomfort using gender segregated restrooms and changing facilities. If you look at question 23, I felt comfortable using gender segregation changing facilities at my campus. 2.88 is the Likert score there. Another heading under which the findings were reported on was campus supports, and 91% of the respondents, that's 121 of them, had access to an LGBTQ plus organisation, while 3.3% had access to an informal one, and 43% of the respondents felt totally accepted by these organisations. 23.8% felt somewhat accepted and 10% felt accepted in a limited sense. 9.8% didn't feel accepted, while 1.8% felt actively discouraged from participating. And outside of LGBTQ organisations, experiences with campus supports and societies and sporting events became more varied. In relation to student societies, the Likert score registers a slightly positive. However, qualitative data indicated that the athletic societies and sporting events can be exclusive and problematic for most respondents. One of the deleted responses from a cisgender person indicated that gender minorities participating in athletics was an issue for them. Athletic societies can be an important form of socialisation and bonding and self-development during higher education programmes, while institutional gym and sport facilities offer students convenient access to exercise equipment and fitness classes. Facility fees are often mandatory and they're included when the students' annual fees, and gender policies should explicitly and comprehensively address this issue so that gender minority students can comfortably access this beneficial aspect of higher education. The respondents were also asked about seeking reasonable accommodations from your institute, and as you can see from the pie graph, 16% of the students sought reasonable accommodations several times. I don't know what several times means, but you can see 22% yes, once or twice. Some didn't know who to contact, some are nervous to do it. Some people were considering it or have done it in the past, and you've got the usual prefer not to say and so on. But what's interesting then is where do they seek the reasonable accommodations from? And see that a little over half didn't require reasonable accommodations, but 32% of those respondents who sought reasonable accommodations sought them from the campus mental health services or the medical centre or disability services. And some went to academic registry, the students' union, some went to the equality or diversity officer, an advisory service, human resources, or a head of department. So this is a particularly interesting question. Has a staff member from teaching, support, or admin ever intentionally and negatively interfered with your transition or academic career? And again, thankfully, 66% said no, but when you look at the rest, they are saying things like 11.46% said that the actions of staff on their transition or academic career was a negative one. 10.42% actions of staff had a detrimental impact on their personal well-being. A lower number, their careers interfered with my academic career. 3.13%, their actions interfered with my transition. And some people, 1%, too nervous to come out due to teacher comments. Deliberate misgendering is a particularly nasty thing to do to a student who does not wish to be known by, let's say, the gender they were assigned at birth. And when we look at the statistics here, again, over half are saying this has never happened to them, it's not applicable to them, but you can see 14% of students or respondents reported this happening once or twice. 9% said yes, it's happened several times. 8% yes and frequently, and 12% is a maybe. The report also looked at off-campus obstacles which might negatively affect the academic performance or life of the student. And again, things like their mental health or medical issues is top of the scale here. 78% of them reported mental health or medical issues. Family issues, 51%, financial, 49%. Again, limited access to medical or transition services, reported by 48%. Trying to get work, 35%. Getting safe housing whilst in college. Experiencing bullying and harassment off campus. So I've just given a brief synopsis of the findings of the Trinity report, and I strongly recommend that you download it. It's freely available. So now it's time to pause and reflect and to consider the following questions. Do you think that the issues described in the report exist at our university? And if so, what can you do in your role to enhance the lived experiences of the gender minority students?